Hey, what is up everyone? I'm Jewel here. And I'm Duffy Duck here. We are back for some more yet again for the likes of the Merxy Toys videos. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games for the Nintendo Wii. So last time we have managed to able to play through the next 5 of those dream events, and oh man, we had an exhilarating blast through well, just have a fun time on those particular events as a result. Mainly buddy forms of Dream Equestrian, all the way up to Dream Fencing. We always have ourselves a good time with it. So today for this episode in particular is the fact that we're heading back onto London Party mode, and because this is the reason why, that as you can tell already, this is actually our post commentary, because as you probably guessed it by now, that today's episode is the fact that we're going to be showing you guys every single rivals of how this game offers us to. Just like in Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games in Vancouver 2010, and before Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games, you're actually going to be starting to compete against with the actual the rival characters in those specific events. Like, as you can see on screen, we haven't exactly got all of them for this point, but however though, here what we're going to decide to do is the fact that we're going to show those off, and including some of these 3 remaining ones, as you can tell from those blank spots in this particular mission list. And because of that though, we'll show those one by one, and hopefully you should probably see why of what the rifles actually looks like. So as you can see, we got ourselves these returning rifles ever since in Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, specifically in Vancouver 2010 installment, and because of that we face off against with E123 Omega in 100-meter sprint. And as you can see on screen, we're going to be selecting a different amount of characters, as you can see on screen. Like for instance, we're going to be selecting Metal Sonic, and then next thing you notice is the fact that whenever we move on to the next rifle, we switch over to a different character. And as a result of that kinds of stuff though, we should probably point things out right away. That's usually, relatively speaking, is the fact that it might take some time to actually just to edit these out, but luckily we did manage to sort this out, so even then though, that's how it usually goes basically. And the objective of those rival events is the fact that obviously you have to win every single of those events basically. So the next rival we have is another returning rival from the likes of the previous game, and that is of course Rouge the Bat. And this time she actually takes place in the forms of 110-meter hurdles, which that was before when Tokyo 2020 starts to kick in, where basically they were able to add in Toadette as a guest character. Yeah, it seems true for that regards. So yeah, and as you can see, we are selecting Shadow right here on screen, because, you know, we'll try to make the actual reference between the Team Dark characters from Sonic Heroes, as well as, I would say in Team Sonic Racing or something as well. So, but even then, no, that's all I can really think about it. So, for the most part though, you just have to win every single of those rival matches, because if you somehow lose the actual event, well, unlike any ones in the Olympic Winter Games and Sochi 2014 Winter Olympic Games, that you can obviously just try this again. However though, in this particular installment this time around, is that in order to actually access to those rifles, although by the way, before we get onto that, here's a new rifle introduced in this particular series, and that is of course Birdo. So as you can see, we're selecting Yoshi along with firstly off against with Birdo, just to make it a little bit more of a representation with the love interest or something. So, and this obviously takes place in 100-meter freestyle swimming. So yeah, you get the idea. And much like the Olympic Winter Games and before Sochi 2014 and before Rio 2016, that they did manage to got themselves their own theme tracks specifically for those rivals. However though, unlike in Rio 2016, is the fact that after when you beat them, you can to actually unlock them, but that's not the case in this particular installment, as well as the ones in Sochi 2014, just because of how the fact that, well, obviously, in order to get access to those rifles in this game, unfortunately though, differently than the likes of how it does in Rio, well, let's just say in the Olympic Winter Games, in Vancouver 2010 and 2014 Sochi, that you assumingly we can to actually compete against with the rival characters straight away from the single player campaign. in this game this time around is the fact that you have to play the ridiculous amount of rounds in London Party mode. And you know what I mean? And during the forms of it, do you remember in the first part of our playthrough that basically we somehow accidentally managed to finish the game while the rival appears actually showed up, specifically Rouge the Bat, specifically if I'm guessing correctly, and as a result we didn't able to actually show that off. So however though, here's the thing though, is the fact that we're going to be switching over to a different save file, specifically our main save file that we actually played this since 2013, and as a result, then we did manage to play London Party several times in the past, including on off-screen, and as a result we can able to actually get some more rivals in between. However though, you remember what I said before about the fact that we're actually missing some of those other missions? Specifically, I would say Eggman, Nega, which we'll show that off until later, and also same applies to, well, not only does this game manage to feature ourselves the returning rivals from the previous games, they also managed to able to introduce the actual rematch encounters with the forms of, I would say, only 4 rivals did manage to have themselves the rematch versions. Specifically, for example, as you can see, we actually face off against with Dry Bones in table tennis singles. And while we get on to the rematch, however though, it does manage to take place in a different event. You know, kind of like the similar thing for how it does it in the Olympic Winter Games for sure. Except the fact that the biggest difference is now is the fact that that was before when Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games that you can able to actually compete against with the bosses or rivals essentially in a dream event specifically. Now in this game in particular is the fact that you can now able to actually, oh, that was an out. Yeah, just want to point it out. So yeah, unlike in the Olympic Winter Games, that if you manage to try to able to compete against with your rival slash bosses in particular, that it obviously always takes place in the actual Olympic events. And then the only difference is now is the fact that some of these rivals might able to compete against in the forms of in the Olympic events themselves, and then some of them now actually takes place in a dream events. So that seems pretty exhilarating whenever we're able to show those off until later. So yeah, as a result of that specific, excuse me, that's you know, we'll just have some lot more exhilaration, and especially noticeable how the fact that how fun this can be. And obviously, ever since during the forms of the Olympic Winter Games for the Dry Bones rifle, basically we're no longer gonna have to worry about the forms of competing against with the team Dry Bones, unlike the ones in the Olympic Winter Games. Specifically, you only encountered Team Dry Bones during, well, I would say multitude of Dry Bones in specifically curling events and ice hockey events, but now in the forms of this game in particular, you only have to face off against just only one. Which, it makes it pretty obvious because of how the fact that in this particular event, as you can see, that we no longer gonna have to deal with a doubles match or anything like that. The next rival we have is Dry Bowser, and obviously we're selecting Bowser for this event because, well, just to make things a little bit matched up in between the two, except that Bowser does have its different hairstyle compared to Dry Bowser, as you can see right there. Out of all of the actual rivals in this game, I will say Dry Bowser is probably the hardest of the bunch. Clearly because, as we established that before, that I will consider that team or Dream long jump events is actually by far as one of the hardest events to win, specifically if you want to achieve first place. But if you really want to get those remaining stickers, as far as you can clearly tell, that if you try to compete against with the different rivals, as you can see, that if you somehow win the actual rival matches, then basically you reward yourselves a bigger sticker. And however though, here's the thing though, is the fact that, as we mentioned this before, you have to play several of those London Party matches, and as a result, it will take you a very, very long time in order to able to actually get those, you know, rivals to appear. I think it only happens every time whenever you get on to, like, after 3 competition times or something like that. I'm not exactly 100% sure, but let me know in the comments below. So as a result, yeah, I think, potentially speaking, is the fact that we did manage to play this on our own time for a bit, and this is also another reason why there's been quite a while since we actually just managed to able to do some commentaries and stuff like that. You know, after when Sonic has still managed to continue playing through, you know, SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom so far. Yeah, because as a result, it took us about 10 or so hours to able to actually get some of these rivals in the actual mission list. However, though, here's the thing, though, is the fact that since we're still missing 3 rivals left, specifically 2 encounters with Eggman Nega, and especially noticeable with 1 rematch encounter against with E123 Omega. And because of that, though, the only problem with that, though, is entirely random. Which, as a result, if you manage to able to replay through London Party several times, you do realize is the fact that the actual rival appear system is oftentimes feel incredibly random this time around. Because normally, if you're able to try to able to think to yourselves that, oh, we did manage to able to come across into one of the rivals, specifically, for example, that you saw Eggman Nega in during forms within London Party mode, and then as a result, after when you're done with that particular event, while he was telling you must able to actually compete it for, and after several amount of turns later, then you do realize it's the fact that we can able to get ourselves the actual rival event, right? Wrong. Turns out it's all entirely random and plus luck based at the same time if you really want to get that specific rivals going. However though, if you really want to get 100% completion of this game, good luck, because as a result, it might as well take you about several hours to able to actually just to get ourselves, you know, some more rivals, more bosses in between, and it's just a lot of busy work. Thankfully, in Sochi 2014, it did manage to fix that solution, because it does manage to obviously takes place in, in Legend Showdown on the single-player campaign. And also still applies to the Olympic Winter Games in Vancouver 2010, which might do the same thing. And eventually, in Rio 2016, and specifically in Rio 2016, if you manage to complete several tournaments in certain events, then you would able to compete them from there. However though, if you somehow lose to the actual unlockable character, you get kicked out. So yeah, as a result, yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a nuisance anyway. Well, until whenever we get on to Tokyo 2020, that we're going back into a similar thing as of how it does it in the Olympic Winter Games and Sochi 2014 at the same time. So yeah, as you can see, we actually now compete against with Jet the Hawk, which once again he managed to able to utilize with the actual specific feat kind of gear kind of stuff, because I'm pretty sure he's more into the forms of the extreme gears since, you know, since in Sonic Riders. And obviously this takes place in Dream Discus, which I remember back in 2013 when me and Sylvester managed to able to play this event a very long time ago. And we somehow screwed over by, I would say, 3 rings specifically. Yeah, because here's the trickiest part about this, is the fact that it's not so bad whenever you try to get some more rings. However, the biggest challenge out of them all, though, is the ending portion. Because if you somehow, you know, don't get any points, if you manage to accidentally land onto the 0 points mark, you're probably not going to win, unless if you really need to be very cautious with timing and everything. And as a result, yeah, just keep an eyes open with the forms of those ring capsules, and especially noticeable to take down the most insane amount of those spinner enemies as soon as possible, because that way, that also gives you rings. Yeah, it's worth pointing out. And the next rival we have is the returning rival from the Olympic Winter Games, and because of this, we face up against with King Boo. Except this time around though, it takes place in Dream Sprint, in Bingo Highway of course. And obviously we're going to be selecting Luigi for the sake of this rival, just to make a reference to the forms of Luigi's Mansion and stuff, except the fact that he doesn't have himself the actual Poltergeist 3000 or something, so... But yeah, it's a bit time consuming if you're trying to able to get every single rivals in this game, but I must admit though right away is the fact that we obviously did try our best to able to actually get all the rivals in this game, but most of the time though, as we said this before, it's a bit time consuming, and plus it's really random and luck based too, because as a result that it will just give you a lot of time to work with. The only best strategy I can think of is the fact that if you have yourselves full Wii Remote access, and in that way you would be able to realize that you're probably able to actually skip over those other mini-games in between. Specifically the quiz ones, some watered-down versions of some of the mini-games from Mario Party series, and all the other jazz and all that stuff. Because the majority you have to able to actually get the rival appears icon is the fact that, well, you just have to replay through you know, the insane amount of matches in London Party, and to top it all off is the fact that you have to go through several amounts of those competition times, which even then, no, it might not be so bad after all, but as long as the fact that if the event goes on for a little bit of a long time, then you were able to expect to realize about the fact that we haven't exactly just managed to catch up or what have you, so... And obviously, as you can see on screen, is the fact that we are basically going to show you guys some missing rivals that we have not got in our own time. Specifically, for example, as I mentioned it before, we have not got Eggman Nega in between, let's just say in fencing, as you can see right there, that Silver, he's managed to able to try to kick his butt ever since in, I would say, in Sonic Rivals and Sonic Rivals 2, just to make it a reference. And also, speaking of Sonic Rivals 2, there's Espio is watching Silver just manage to kick Eggman Nega's butt. You know, kinda like the same thing for Sonic Rivals 2. Yeah, it seems pretty interesting reference, as you can tell from this point right there. So, but yeah, you probably get the idea. Oh yeah, between the forms of other events, specifically table tennis, and also fencing, as you can see right there, the points counters now actually differs now, because usually, relatively speaking, I'm pretty sure that in table tennis we've already set into 5 points, whilst in the forms of fencing this time around, the actual points counters now into, well, let's just say between the forms of, well, 5 points this time around, so I guess that makes it a little bit more of a difference from specific, you know, it's hard to explain about this sometimes, because I know it's been such a very long time since we actually played this game from time to time. And obviously, as you can see, that we now have ourselves a rematch encounter with E123 Omega, where previously he was on 100-meter sprint, but if you manage to able to have a rematch against with him, it's now going to take place in 4 times 100-meter relay. You know, it's kind of like the similar thing for Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, where the first time you were able to actually face off against with him is in speed skating 500 meters, and then later on in the team festival you actually face off against with him in short track relay, and so on and so forth. The only rival that does not make a return is the Big Bullet Bill from the likes of the Olympic Winter Games in Vancouver 2010. I'm guessing it's probably because the Big Bullet Bill has been replaced by Birdo, I'm presuming for this point. So yeah, you probably get the idea of some slight differences between this and the likes of the previous installment or something like that for that matter. So, but either way though, everything else should be expected by this point. Something's worth mentioning too is the fact that if you're trying to compete against with the rivals in team-based events, specifically for example, as you saw, that with the 4 times 100 meter relay, some of these computer players on your teammates, it's randomized as well. So unfortunately you can't able to actually just to choose which players you want to go through for specific teams and stuff like that. So yeah, something's worth mentioning. And obviously the next rematch encounter is Eggman Nega once again, even though it's basically the same thing as fencing, except now it's going to take place in Dream Fencing in Ocean Palace. So, you know, you probably get the idea of how this is going, and especially noticeable how the fact that, again, it will take you a lot of hours in order to be able to actually get every single rivals of this game, and as a result it will take you a lot of like opportunities about the fact that again it's all randomized, as you know. So yeah, as a result there's not much else we can say for this point apart from the fact that there's not much else I can usually just try to say about this. But then again, we would appreciate it for how the fact that we could able to actually get ourselves the final 3 rivals we can show off, specifically you know, compete against with Eggman Nega twice, and another one from E123 Omega, but obviously, as we said this before, it took us about 10 hours to able to actually just to replay through London Party like few rounds later, and then out of luck, we haven't exactly got all of them throughout. So yeah, something's worth mentioning though, so I just wasn't able to point it out. The next rematch we have is Dry Bones once again, and except this time it now takes place in Dream Hurdles, and as you can see we are playing as Waluigi. So yeah, which makes it a little bit obvious for the simple factor, so either way though, yeah. And yeah, there's gonna be a lot of like other things I would like to explain, but for the most part though, we'll talk about a little bit of details. Specifically, that as far as what Sonic has already mentioned since SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Let's Play so far, basically we actually got ourselves the new stuff from the likes of the PlayStation 5, which well, I've seen the actual design of the actual PlayStation 5, I found to be, alright. I mean, not my kind of favorite of choice for that design in my opinion, but I'm sure most people seem to have their own opinions as well. But basically what it gets is just the fact that they got themselves white curves in between like one side and the other. Plus about the fact that I'm pretty sure it's possible you can able to actually place your PlayStation 5 in a horizontal position, because I know for the fact that on the actual display that you would be able to actually just to stand it vertically. However though, the biggest difference is I've noticed is the fact that between the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 5, don't forget, Jewel. Oh yeah, sorry about that. So from the PlayStation 5 hardware, it's actually a lot taller, and plus a lot bigger too, in comparison to PlayStation 3 and 4. And also, because of how the fact that one thing we should probably mention about this too, about the fact that there was one exciting thing that has been happening recently, that is, get this folks, Pokemon Snap is finally back. Ever since about almost like, well I would say, 20 years ago actually, since North America's release. So yes, we finally got ourselves a brand new Pokemon Snap title that's about to be coming out for the Nintendo Switch. And I'm gonna say, I am super excited about that particular new game it's about to be releasing. But it might be still in development at the moment, Joel. I was gonna say that right now. Alright, so now we move on to the final rematching, the rival rematches, and this time around we face up against with Birdo once again, except now it takes place in badminton doubles, as you can see. And speaking of such, Yoshi managed to makes himself as a comeback after the events of the first Birdo rival encounter since in a swimming event, and except now that he just wants to join in the actual Birdo match again, and conveniently enough we're selecting Peach for last. So yeah, this one might take about quite a few minutes. This is probably because of how the fact that we did manage to play this on our own time, and we forgot to able to switch the computer players, or in this case, for sake of time, we forgot to switch our teammates to like one player to computer player. Because we did manage to able to did this on our own time with two one-players controlled characters, and I'm gonna say, it is so exhausting. Like, literally exhausted, like, throughout the whole entire match. And as a result, that we did manage to play it in our own time, as we said before, and it took us several minutes to able to actually get this match finished and over with. And as a result, depending on the forms of the actual timing window, especially noticeable how the fact that, well, this event might get pretty tricky and difficult, probably due to the fact that, as I said before, it's all about the timing window, you have to pull it off. And as a result of that specific stuff though, is the fact that, well, it just took us a lot of time. And also, as you can see on the badminton doubles, as you can see, that Birdo, in addition to have ourselves Birdo herself, she also managed to bring in the blue Birdo version as well, to make it a little more likely at representing with the forms of the teammates or something like that. So, whilst that was before when Sochi 2014 came around, they did manage to bring us 4 Birdos to able to compete against in ice hockey event, which to be expected for this point, Joel, because of how the fact that we actually have ourselves 4-on-4 in the actual ice hockey events. So yeah, that's not much else we can talk about in terms of the forms of the rival matches in this game. I will say that it is a bit of a tedious process if you really want to go through every single one of them. At least assuming, because this is all depending on luck, by the way, if you really want to get those remaining of those. Well, in addition to able to get yourselves the remaining missions, or especially noticeable with the actual rival matches in between, you also want to point things out is the fact that if you really want to achieve all of the stickers in the game, well, best be sure to win them, because if you somehow lose to the rivals and stuff like that, you're not going to get any of those stickers. So, in addition to the actual missions themselves too. So, even though that's all I can really say about this for the most part. So, even though luckily for us though, is the fact that, as you can tell, that this match goes by a lot quicker, because as you can tell, that since we have now switched our teammate Yoshi to a computer player, as a result, that we could expect it just makes things a heck of a lot more easier to able to actually control, you know, just to control yourself while simply just trying to able to do with all sorts of things. Especially noticeable how the fact that Birdo sometimes misses her swing, and as a result, between the forms of specific stuff in mind, then you were able to actually win that stuff no problem. So, it's kind of a shame that you can't able to actually play those characters up until Rio 2016 on the 3DS and the Wii U, and especially noticeable in Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. That way you can able to actually just to play as the actual new characters and stuff like that. So, and yeah, that's as far as we can say in terms of the rival matches in this game. I think there are about likely 12 of these rival matches are pursuing. Like 9 of them are, well, I would say 8 rival characters in between for the normal matches and 4 rematch encounters. So there are a grand total of 12 rival missions, which has actually got a little bit more upgraded or something like that compared to the previous game for sure. But I digress. So we just have to end things off at this point right there. So join us next time for more of Let's Play of Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games. It's the fact that this will actually be the finale in terms of next Tuesday in particular. Now we're going to show off bonus mode, records, and options, and etc. So I'll see you guys in next Tuesday. Later, fellas.